To India's quick commerce race, Swiggy's Q3 results disappoint. Net loss widens by almost 40% to 800 crore rupees. And after a controversial job post by Zomato founder Rupinder Goyal, the company hires 30 candidates from a pool of over 1,800 applications. 2 chief of staff positions for Rupinder Goyal's office have been filled. Meanwhile, the latest entrant, Zepto, has tied up with Skoda for a 10-minute delivery. But the quick commerce firm clarifies it won't deliver the car, but just a test drive of the Skoda Kayak in 10 minutes. Gold demand in India saw a 5% year-on-year increase in 2024, reaching 800 tons as per the World Gold Council's report released on Wednesday. The growth is driven by reduced import duties as well as strong purchasing activity related to weddings and festivals. Gold prices continued their upward trend for the 5th consecutive session, rising by 500 rupees to a new high of 85,800 rupees per 10 grams in Delhi. This is driven by steady demand from jewelers and retailers. Meanwhile, the Indian rupee has hit a record low on Wednesday, falling sharply in the afternoon as bearish market sentiment took hold and traders anticipated a possible rate cut in this week's RBI's Monetary Policy Committee. The rupee dipped to 87 rupees 48 paisa against the US dollar before closing at 87 rupees 46 paisa, marking a 0.4% decline in the day. Now, the currency has dropped over 2% in this calendar year alone. Remember, we are just in the first week of February, and in this year, which is just the 31 days of Jan and about 5 days of February, the currency has dropped about 2%, making it the worst performing major Asian currency. Now, several factors, including persistent foreign outflows, uncertainty surrounding US trade tariffs, and expectations of rate cuts at home, have contributed to the weakness of the rupee. So on the show today, we try and get you answers to these questions. Number one, how will these record high gold prices impact you as a buyer of gold or an investor? Number two, is it a good time to buy gold now and ride the rally, or should you wait for a price correction? Number three, with the sovereign gold bonds now out of order, should you be investing in physical gold, ETFs, or digital gold? What should be your investment strategy? Number four, how does the rupee exchange rate affect gold prices, and how can consumers hedge with the falling rupee and the rising rate of gold? And finally, should you consider selling instead of buying your gold holdings, or is it a better time to hold for long-term gains? Joining me on the show is Kunal Shah, Head Commodities Research, Nirmal Bang. I also have with me Mitali Nikore, Founder and Chief Economist, Nikore Associates. Kunal, let me begin by asking you, what is driving the surge in gold?
More of fear that the US tariff coupled with the change in economic order, what we are seeing is a rise of Asia as compared to rise of East as compared to the West. And East is the major dominating and driving factor behind gold purchases. So we are seeing all the Eastern central bankers accumulating gold. After the Russia's invasion on Ukraine, when Russia's foreign exchange reserve was freeze, all the central banks are buying gold like there is no tomorrow. All the central banks are diversifying their reserve. So the price is inelastic. It doesn't matter. Every time they want to diversify, they are diversifying their reserve with gold. So this is the key change which has taken place 3 years back, and it continues. Another thing is inflationary expectations are surging up, and that is also leading investors to drive their allocation into gold. One of the most important reasons behind the rally, what we are seeing, is the tariff. Okay. So tariffs are not good for the global economy, and tariffs are always inflationary. It comes up, it leads to the protectionism rather than the globalization, and because of that, a lot of uncertainty will arise in the supply chain. The inflationary expectation will move up, and hence gold is responding to that. So the spread between the London gold and US gold is pretty high. It went up to as high as $45.
Okay.
That is spot gold versus the US gold. But it seems that there is no reason why you should sell gold right now. It's the time to hold on to gold. And even though we've seen a at least 10% return in the year 2025,
Yeah.
we believe that small bouts of correction can take place due to US-China trade talks, some positive outcome out of that and everything. But the trajectory still remains upward, and
Okay.
we continue to remain bullish on gold.
Okay, you continue to remain bullish on gold. Trajectory is upwards, and Kunal Shah there warning our viewers not to sell gold right now, but this may be the time to hold on. Let's bring in economist Mithali Nikore into this conversation. Mithali, good morning. Now, obviously, what we are seeing across the world is pretty much beyond the control of anyone sitting here in India. So, you've got potential tariff wars, you've got foreign investors really hedging on the US dollar, and there's an outflow. And in general, when stock markets are volatile and show a downward trend, the inverse relationship between gold kicks in and gold starts going high. But for India, it becomes a double whammy. We really don't know how to deal with inflation. We really don't know what's going to happen in the RBI MPC decision tomorrow. And whatever else is happening in the world is outside our ambit. So what really is the future from here? And more specifically, what do you expect, the RBI Monetary Policy Committee to do? And will that have a bearing on the Indian rupee and the gold prices?
So I think, Karthik, today you are really embodying the voice of a lot of consumers.
Okay.
In all these questions that you're asking, because there is a lot of global uncertainty, and I think the president of the United States, President Trump, is actually thriving on this uncertainty. Because if you see the global markets, not only in India, but global markets are reacting. We are seeing several Asian stocks tumble, and we're seeing, foreign investors scrambling because they are not very sure what is the market where, especially FIIs, what we call as foreign institutional investors, are scrambling because they are not sure which market is going to give them the highest possible return. And in fact, many of them are what we call as flying to safety. Right. So they are going off back into US securities, US bond markets even, because they're not very sure how the different executive orders that President Trump is signing are going to have, what kind of impact they're going to have.
Right.
If you see, even on tariffs, it was a genius move. He went in, he, said, I'm going to impose this 25% tariff on a Mexico, on a Canada. And then literally 2 days later, he has a phone call, strikes a deal. And now the US is at a better position than where it was. But the tariffs still haven't been imposed.
That's right.
So at the end of the day, this is all about creating chaos. And the markets are reacting to that chaos by investing in the one commodity that withstands all chaos, which is gold. And
Right.
this is why we're seeing the gold demand is reaching record highs. And of course, in India, there are domestic reasons also, as you said, consumer preferences very strong for gold. But this is also because a lot of banks in India and even the Reserve Bank of India are actually investing in shoring up their gold reserves.
Right.
Because that helps them and, manage the currency.
All
Secondly, when it comes to currency management and also like exchange rate management, the RBI has been doing a phenomenal job over the last 2 years to manage the currency. There's a lot of rupee that is being sold in the market by the RBI. So I do expect that the MPC decision will be in line in order to maintain the amount of the currency. But it's not a bad thing for our currency to fall at this stage because it actually benefits our exports. It makes our exports cheaper and gives us a competitive edge in global markets. It also makes investing cheaper in India. So if we are trying to attract investment and foreign investment, they can buy greater equities and debt shares with a lower rupee.
Right.
So it's
I hear
actually
you.
all in all good for India.
I hear you. Let me bring in Kunal Shah back. Kunal, Mithali is trying to argue the point that a depreciating rupee is good for exports. I agree with her, but India still has a current account deficit. And I think one of our biggest import products happens to be oil. So a falling rupee is obviously bad for India's imports. So with that in line, with the RBI, people are hoping that the RBI would cut rates by at least 25 basis points tomorrow. If the RBI does go ahead and do that, what is the impact that's going to have on the Indian rupee and more so on gold?
So Indian rupees, like you say, it's dominated by two factors. One is the external, and another is internal. So rate cut would definitely lead to some strength in the Indian rupee, but we have to see what's happening outside India and to the dollar index and other emerging market currencies. So we are of the view that the dollar index have peaked out at 110, and it is going to gradually decline going forward. And uh, on that view, we believe that there is also possibility that 88 can be the top for the Indian rupee
Okay.
as far as the depreciation part is concerned, and gradually, it should appreciate with the falling dollar. So 3 months down the line, it should be it should have been appreciated then further depreciation. As far as exporter point of view, yes, exporters will want rupee to depreciate, but it's not good from the inflation point of view also. And I believe that we have seen the worst. A bit of a percent or odd another depreciation can come,
Okay.
but not beyond that.
Okay, so the worst could potentially be over, and maybe 88 is the level for the rupee. I want to bring both your views in now on investors who are looking at hedging on the gold, on the yellow metal. What should really their strategy be? Let me start by bringing in Mithali. Mithali, sovereign gold bonds are pretty much history now. I don't think they're coming back in the foreseeable future. So in the absence of sovereign gold bonds, should physical gold be held by consumers at all?
I think, Karthik, very honestly, people will invest in physical gold in India. I mean,
Okay.
Indian consumers will always have some amount of gold in their investment portfolio. But the question is how much? At this point in time, my advice to investors would surely be to go ahead and increase by at least 10 to 15% their holdings in physical gold
Okay.
in the next 3 months. And I do not think that the currency wars have bottomed out.
Okay.
I think the chaos is going to continue. We might even see 89 or 90 mark being breached by the rupee dollar exchange rate.
All right, let me bring in Kunal into this. Kunal, gold allocation should go up, Mithali is saying, by about 10 to 15% as these high rates. Do you agree with that? And then if not sovereign gold bonds, should it be physical gold? Should it be ETFs? Or what other tools can, or should it be digital gold? What tools can investors apply right now?
So the second part of your question, I believe that ETFs are a good way to invest in. Sovereign gold bond doesn't exist. So one is gold ETFs have done well. The cost is very low as far as the AMC charges and everything is concerned. So I think that is a better choice. As far as from here, where are we heading? And I also firmly believe that we are in a structural bull market. The reason for that is gold is no longer just a asset class, it's a strategic investment for central bankers, for investors, because so this year itself, US debt, 9 trillion worth of US debt is going to expire this year. So they have to repay that. So how they are going to do it? There are a lot of uncertainty. What if inflation shoots up? What if China comes with a stimulus package? What if trade war worsens between US and China?
Right.
So all this question doesn't have any easy answers. And hence, we believe that the gold will continue to be a strategic investment and do very well going forward. So I am pretty upbeat about the outlook, and I will not mind even if investing at these levels. It can go down a bit due to any reasons. Volatility will persist, but the trend seems to be still on the upside.
Okay, trend seems to be on the upside. Great. Kunal Shah continues to be bullish on gold, and Mithali Nikore is saying that maybe increase gold holdings by 10 to 15%. Well, let's leave it at that for now. Thank you so much, Mithali and Kunal, for joining us here on Morning Brief at 9. Well, before we head into a break, the Indian stock markets have opened. Let's look at what our trading levels look like today. Let's bring up Sensex, Nifty 50, as well as the small cap and mid cap space. Well, it's been a green open for the stock markets. Nifty 50 is still below the 24,000 levels, but holding strong at about 23,760. Remember, the markets had closed weaker yesterday after a bit of a rally that it saw on Tuesday. Meanwhile, Sensex is still in the 78,400 territory. Indian volatility has gone down. The India VIX is down about 1% today, down at about 14.24 levels. Let's pull up the Nifty 50 heat map and look at which sectors and which stocks are performing well today. We've got a green bag on the IT stocks. The TCS, Infosys, HCL Tech, Wipro and Tech Mahindra stocks are all in the green this morning. Meanwhile, there's a little bit of negativity on the consumer durables with Maruti, M&M, Titan and Bajaj Auto in the red. Well, let's head into a short break now. A lot more coming up on the other side of the break. We'll be joined by Dr. Srinath Sridharan to understand Sam Altman's U-turn on India's AI story, and we'll also talk about potential outcomes on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's scheduled meeting with US President Donald Trump next week. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
Associate sponsor, New Virtus GT line, style to wander.
Has AAP got so tarnished that it can't gain a fourth term? Will Delhi voters give BJP a chance after 26 years?
Which way did the poor and the middle class vote?
Can Congress reverse its fortunes in the capital?
What issues is Delhi voting for in this election?
What does the Delhi verdict mean for the nation? Our team here breaks it down for you like no one else.
Stay with News 9. Stay with News 9.
Stay ahead with News 9
For the most informed debates.
unmissable updates.
For the most accurate coverage.
And I'm falling for you like crazy. Ah, boom, boom. Every heartbeat is only for you. Every breath, every moment with you.
Shall we do it again?
My heart goes boom.
Unlimited Love. Bookings open on 14th February.
Your promise is IGI certified. Your ambition is IGI certified. 14-step grading process. 50 years of trust. IGI Trust Certified.
Mama must be missing us, nah?
Let's take it one day, give me one day. Feel the itch under my skin, it's a fun day. You be like it when you see we in that, hey. It doesn't matter, just gotta get the way.
New GT line, Taigun and Virtus. Volkswagen.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman is in India again. Remember, Sam Altman had previously mocked India's ability to develop low-cost, large-scale AI models like the ChatGPT and called India's will to try to be absolutely hopeless. He has now made a U-turn. On his now India visit, he not only expressed support but also said India could take the leadership role in artificial intelligence. So Altman now says his 2023 hopeless remarks were taken out of context and added that while AI models are still costly to develop, the increasing feasibility of training them means India can and should lead in the AI space. On his India visit, Altman was speaking at an event with IT Minister Ashwini Vaishnav. Altman emphasized India's growing role in artificial intelligence and noted that India is now OpenAI's second largest market. Later, Altman also met India's vibrant startup community with leaders like Paytm's Vijay Shekhar Sharma and Snapdeal's Kunal Behel in attendance. Meanwhile, Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav said that India's AI mission across healthcare, education and other social sectors is on the verge of takeoff. Let's listen in to what Ashwini Vaishnav said.
Our country sent a mission to the moon at a fraction of the cost that many other countries did, right? Why can't we do a model which will be a fraction of the cost that many other countries do? So yes, innovation will bring that cost down. Within the applications in healthcare, in education, in agriculture, in weather forecasting, in disaster management, in transportation, multiple different things we are working. And I request the entire startup community to come up with very unique solutions, and we'll be open. We are very soon starting a kind of open competition for it, open empanelment competition kind of thing. So that will be huge. So many problems can be solved, and why don't we use this latest technology that we have for solving these problems, right? You guys are good with that? We'd love to do.
So a thumping response there to Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav and the conversation he had with Sam Altman. For India, obviously the AI case is very strong. India needs and India will build and deliver its own AI tools for social good as part of the national AI mission as well. But for Sam Altman, is this a change of heart? A jolt of reality that alternate models like ChatGPT, especially the kind that China's DeepSeek has delivered, can be built? Or, simply speaking, is it a hedge against China's DeepSeek? Joining me to understand this and more is Dr. Srinath Sridharan, policy researcher and corporate advisor. Good morning, Srinath. Thanks for being here on News 9. What is this change of stance that Sam Altman is now displaying here in India?
I think it's pure market access, right? And the commercials. I mean, OpenAI is wanting to move towards for-profit model, and reality is India is the second largest revenue base for them. But for me, more than Sam Altman doing it, he's doing what probably a true, mission-hungry capitalist does. He wants access, and he's changing his tune. But I think the larger picture, I'm kind of intrigued, is the same minister who's also to protect your sector, that's the media sector. The media industry in India has taken OpenAI to court for IPR violation, and we have gone all out gaga in welcoming him. And I think that's very, very intriguing. If we are fearing IPR violations in one sector, it's the same model that could eat up all the data access across various sectors, and we want to collaborate with them. But very strategically, there are two aspects that's going to happen next week, right? Monday and Tuesday is the Paris AI Summit, the Global AI Summit, where Prime Minister Modi is the co-chair.
Right.
And this is the summit that's going to happen after it happened in London about 15 months ago.
Right.
India, I mean, to be really honest, we haven't done or had any major breakthrough in AI. And so we're going to probably wanting to say some of this. Two, if you remember, the President Biden's last parting gift to the world was creating AI diffusion regime, a framework that restricts access to India and China from accessing chipsets and accessing data models from 2027. So ahead of, I think, the Prime Minister Modi's summit with President Trump, is this a white flag of sorts of saying that, hey, we are willing to align with the US OpenAI model rather than DeepSeek model? So I'm reading more about politics here, geopolitics, rather than just OpenAI wanting Indian access. It is also India playing up, I think, its cards ahead of the summit.
All right, India playing its cards ahead of the summit. Okay, interesting view there, Srinath. But talking about, some of the items that you touched upon. Number one, obviously, India is the second largest user of ChatGPT, perhaps, and that is what makes Sam Altman bullish on India. But India hasn't really shown or displayed yet what it can do to build its own language models, large, small, cost notwithstanding. We've seen initial announcements come from companies like Wipro, like Infosys, that they are really, betting big on AI. But in terms of real tools, consumer-facing tools that can be built, India hasn't actually yet done it. And so, the question really is, we might be a great market for Sam Altman and OpenAI, but are we going to be able to contribute to the growth of AI in the foreseeable future by building our own models or not?
So I think it looks like we're kind of lagging much behind in the AI race, Karthik. The reality is if AI were to be seen as, let's say, large pipelines, digital pipelines, and the machines that operate those, we don't own any of those. We seem to be plumbers and technicians tinkering with it. I mean, if, for example, our ITES services companies want to offer AI solutions to their global clients, it is more as a technician rather than as the owner. I think the advantage, what we saw in the Web 1, Web 2 era, which is from the 1990s when the internet became large and commercial, is the Western model. The big tech companies are from the West. They control the narrative. Even today, the social media. In the Web 3 narrative and the AI narrative, we have lost the race. I mean, we have been talking about AI for quite some time, but we are large consumers rather than creators. I think that's the challenge. Who owns the IP is actually going to win this global race. I mean, 21st century is about, at least the next second half of the 21st century is going to be about AI. And we don't seem to have a concrete plan. I mean, our AI mission, yes, it is frugal in terms of budgets, but the reality is Jugaad cannot win wars like this. While we can be frugal, Jugaad won't win. Two, our STEM ecosystem overall has been very fragmented. The private capex and R&D budgets are not there. And probably, I think India needs to, until we can find our own feet, collaborate with the US. And I think it is going to be an interesting summit because there are going to be lots of gives and takes that we'll have to do next week. I think AI is going to be one serious one because we will want access to chipsets.
Absolutely. Of course. So we want access to chips, and in fact, the conversation also spoke about India building its own GPUs. And, I really want to come back to this whole DeepSeek debate that was out there. You're saying India should not do jugaad and India needs to be frugal. DeepSeek has been frugal and as frugal as it gets. So, I mean, is the innovation story in the foreseeable future over, Srinath, and have we lost the bus on being frugal? And more importantly, we also have jobs to think about. If our IT sector jobs are going to be threatened by AI, then we are not creating enough jobs in AI as well. So, I mean, where does this leave the Indian economy and Indian job seekers, especially those who work in the IT sector? Also, given the fact that H-1B visas in the US are still a contentious issue.
So I think in the short term, I think we will be able to solve for it with political mileage, give and take something here and there. But the reality is for the future, when I say the future, I'm talking about 7 to 10 years ends. What do we do? Do we remain a nation of cyber coolies? That's a choice that we should have made long time ago. And I think even now it is late, but we'll have to catch up. We cannot remain a nation of cyber coolies because if technology can do what humans are doing, right from coding to doing a lot more other things, we are completely outdated. And I think the challenge for India is that we are the largest youth population in the world. And there is no answer to how do we keep them productively engaged. We don't have the money. We are still low middle income nation globally. We have seen our economy slow down for the last couple of quarters. So I think this summit also comes at the time when, for the first time when the previous time when President Trump and Prime Minister Modi met, India was a shining economy with no domestic challenges, at least from the economic point of view. This is a time when we are going to negotiate from a position of little weakening economy and what do we do with it. And I think the US knows it very well to drive a tough bargain.
All right, Srinath. Well, stay with me. You're talking about the last time President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi met. Let's now talk about the next time that they're slated to meet. That's right. US President Donald Trump has invited Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit the White House next week, as confirmed by a White House official. This announcement came shortly after a US military plane left to return deported migrants to India. Remember, Trump and Prime Minister Modi had a phone conversation on the 27th of January where they discussed key issues, including immigration. Trump emphasized the importance of India purchasing more American-made security equipment and maintaining fair trade relations between the two countries. India, a strategic partner of the US, is countering China, aims to strengthen its trade ties with the US and ease the process for citizens to obtain skilled worker visas. So what really could come out of the meeting between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi next week? Here are 5 items that we have put together that could perhaps be on agenda. Number 1, India could try to thwart the trade tariffs. Remember, Trump has more than once in the recent past mentioned that India has not been the fairest in its trade with the US. US in the interim will try to push for more exports to India. India, on the other hand, will try to protect the trade surplus of more than $30 billion with the US. Number 4 on the agenda could perhaps be return of more undocumented Indians in the US. And finally, number 5, we could perhaps look at further strengthening in terms of technology transfer for the nuclear energy deal with the US. Srinath, these are 5 points that we think could be on agenda. Which of these do you think is the most relevant right now? To my mind, it's going to be trade tariffs and some way to offset the trade tariffs coming India's way.
Yeah, I think the other one is the defense deal, right? The US would want us to buy defense arms and ammunitions. And if India signs up, let's say, ahead of the US summit, if we sign up the treaty with France to buy arms and ammunitions, I think there's going to be more added pressure to offset some of those. The reality is global trade is a zero-sum game. We can't keep purchasing all the time. 2, I think we are also going to find other difficulties which will not be in the formal agenda, but I'm sure the 2 other conversations would be the US indictment of Indian conglomerate and how do we want it to go away, because there are optics involved in this and in economy. And 2 is the Canadian US accusation about an Indian investigative officer. And that's something I think it's going to be on the off-the-record conversation. But on the record, I think definitely the small nuclear reactors, I think will be an easy win for both sides, a good one. H1B, I think, will be a good one for at least the short term. We will need that to win. India, I think, has shown readiness to take back illegal immigrants. And the larger narrative for India is going to be, will India then get up and push back illegal immigrants who have come into its countries? Because end of the day, it's not just a social burden alone. There's an economic rationale there. The third one, I think, very, very important is how do we make this conversation about access to the market? I think some of the large big tech companies in India are going to demand a larger pound of flesh, be it financial services in India and others. And India, if you remember, has got the digital protection bill coming up. How do we push back and stay the course is going to be a real challenge. How do we take on the Metas and the Googles of the world who want bigger access? Amazon is already here, Walmart is already here. All of them are going to want bigger access. And I think that definitely would be on the Trump agenda to push through. The big techs, if you remember, in the entire presidential campaign, they've spoken about deregulation and wanting to grow. And India is one large consumption market. But the challenge really for us is once you open the Pandora's box, you cannot push it back again. Do we really have the political might to push back? I think that's going to be the interesting challenge.
All right. I just want to bring your attention to tariffs for just a minute longer, Srinath. Now, the theory really out there is that US's only concern is China and whatever it's trying to do with Canada and Mexico. And the pullback that we've seen from that is primarily just to have a cleaner slate saying that, hey, we are not going singularly after China. But that's the conspiracy theory, that it is actually going after China, and all other tariff decisions which also get rolled back are just to make sure that that the only country that gets hampered in the tariff war is China. Do you agree with that school of thought, or is that a little too far-fetched?
I think I would add on to that. I don't agree with it fully, because I think the larger elephant in the room is Russia. Despite the so-called US sanctions against Russia, Russia has been standing tall. I'm not taking any sides on this entire narrative about Russia, Ukraine, others. But the reality is US is going to push India's buttons on India importing oil from Russia.
Right.
And if you remember, Saudi, the US has already reached out to Saudi, and Saudi is pumping in $500 billion of money in the AI ecosystem. So, and this is a president who does not believe in climate change, who believes in fossil fuel and all of those. So I think it is also the US is pushing Russia's buttons, and whatever can hurt it back. China and Russia have been getting closer. So can it hurt Russia through China? Can it push India to kind of step back away from Russia? I think some of those narratives, look at Russia, don't forget that. The closest missile, even during the Cold War, from the Russian border to the American border was less than 4 hours of that's it. So I think that Cold War still continues, but I think the narrative now, the newest Cold War, I think is the AI war with China. But I hope that India has a relevant seat and not have these conversations where we have to, literally, so to speak, if I were to use the American justice system, you have kind of indicted a guy called Sam Altman in the court of law for media violations, IPR violations, and the same minister who's also in charge of media as well as IT. We are wooing him publicly, talking about, hey, we want to open the access to you. So I think it is something more than just Sam Altman.
All right, let's leave it at that, Srinath. Thank you so much for taking out time and joining us here on Morning Brief at 9. Moving on to some other domestic stories now. Zomato CEO Deepinder Goyal addressed the online backlash over a controversial chief of staff job posting, revealing that the company received over 18,000 applications and selected 30 candidates for various positions. Goyal clarified that no candidate was required to pay to work with Zomato. Remember, this was the criticism that was stated earlier, and Deepinder Goyal has refuted the criticism over the eligibility criteria for the role. In a hiring update shared on X and LinkedIn, he announced that 18 of the selected candidates have already started in high-impact roles at Zomato and its group companies, including Blinkit. These individuals are being handsomely compensated, says his post, for the value they bring to the company. Remember, the controversy started from a November job post for a chief of staff role where Goyal had stated that prospective candidates would need to pay 20 lakh rupees for the first year. This amount would be donated to Feeding India, with Zomato pledging to contribute 50 lakh rupees to a charity of the candidate's choice. And moving on, there's nothing stopping the 10-minute delivery race. While the race to deliver groceries, food, or even printouts is now the new normal for quick commerce, if someone told you that you can now book a new car and have it delivered to your doorstep in 10 minutes, well, that would be perhaps stretching the imagination too far, wouldn't it? But netizens were in shock when Zepto and Skoda joined hands for a 10-minute car delivery. That's right, you heard that absolutely right. Zepto will deliver a Skoda car to your doorstep in 10 minutes. But there's a small catch, and Zepto has clarified it. While the company will deliver a Skoda Kayak to your doorstep in 10 minutes, it would not be yours to keep, but just to test drive. Quick commerce innovation doesn't stop surprising you, and let's see what's the next ace up their sleeves. All right, before we head into a break, a quick look at global headlines making news today. Gold prices hit record high as investors seek safety amid US-China trade tensions. US Postal Service resumes accepting parcels from China and Hong Kong after temporary suspension. Container shipping liner Hapag-Lloyd says it can handle US tariffs on Chinese goods as earnings soar in Q4. Mexico deploys hundreds of soldiers to US border in fentanyl crackdown as part of agreement to prevent US tariffs. Wall Street ends higher as investors focus on rate cuts despite disappointing Alphabet earnings. Meanwhile, Barbie and Hot Wheels maker Mattel shares soar as company raises profit forecast, warns of price hike due to tariffs. US President Donald Trump's controversial Gaza takeover plan faces widespread international condemnation and rejection from key Middle East leaders, including Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. China's antitrust regulator reportedly set to investigate Apple's App Store fees and policies amid US-China tensions and new tariffs. And in a twist of fate, Nissan and Honda may end merger talks amid industry challenges and uncertainty. All these stories and more on the other side. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
And I'm falling for you like crazy. Ah, boom, boom. Every heartbeat is
Shall we do it again?
My heart goes boom.
Unlimited love. Bookings open on 14th February.
अब दिल्ली वालों ने ठान लिया है कि इस बार बदलाव करना है. बोलिए जय.
So you can hear what the BJP workers here have to say.
जब ये कहते हैं मोदी काम नहीं करने दे रहे हैं, तो हम मोदी जी को ही जिता लेते हैं. आपको काम करना नहीं, सिर्फ रोना है.
वहाँ से लोग आते हैं, उनको लगता है बैरिकेड है, बंद है, वो वहीं से घूम के वापस जा रहे हैं.
Gaurav Bhardwaj alleging that some things are being done in Aam Aadmi Party strongholds to slow down the voting.
No one to care for the government employees.
इससे बेहतर है दिल्ली में भी हमारे पास बीजेपी हो, ताकि काम को जो है गति मिल सके.
People here in the particular constituency are looking forward to good governance.
Message to the people of the national capital is great that you have exercised your responsibility.
This is Kabir Naqvi.
This is Shriya Kundu.
This is Yash Goel.
Reporting for News 9.
For News 9.
For News 9.
खेला होगा हर नहले पे दहला होगा ये बड़ा है स्टेज बड़ा है पूरा भारत साथ खड़ा है we are the tigers साथ खड़ा है we are the tigers गेम बड़ा है dribble like a rap pass setting up the trap kick it hard in the ball chuck there for the ball we are the tigers chuck there for the ball football. We are the tigers. Saturday football. We are the tigers. Saturday football. Saturday football.
Back, you're watching Morning Brief at 9. Let's look at all the global stories in news today. US President Donald Trump's proposal for the US to take control of war-torn Gaza and transform it into a Riviera of the Middle East has drawn strong backlash. The plan, which includes resettling Palestinians elsewhere, has sparked widespread criticism, with critics questioning its feasibility and the long-term consequences for the region. Take a look.
The US will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too.
President Donald Trump's plan for the US to take over Gaza after permanently resettling Palestinians has sparked international condemnation.
I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent.
His proposal has shattered Washington's decades-long policy of a two-state solution, which would create an independent state for Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, alongside Israel's existing one. Regional heavyweight Saudi Arabia, which Trump hopes will establish ties with Israel, rejected the plan outright, along with the leaders of Jordan and Egypt. France said the forced displacement of Gazans would be a serious violation of international law and would further destabilize the region, while countries including Russia, China, the UK and Germany said they continued to support the two-state solution. Nabil Abu Rudaina is a spokesperson of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
The President and the Palestinian people had already rejected fully and completely these demands. This land is a Palestinian land, it's the international law, it's the Arab Peace Initiative. We refuse any kind of transfer for the Palestinian people, and we appreciate the position of the Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Jordan concerning this issue.
West Bank residents also condemned the pledge. One asked where Trump imagines he'll relocate the Palestinians to. Another told Reuters that Trump wants to, quote, control the world, but doesn't understand what he's talking about. An official from Palestinian militant group Hamas, which ruled the Gaza Strip before the war with Israel, dismissed the plan as, quote, ridiculous and absurd.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
In his first major Middle East policy announcement, President Trump, a former New York property developer, said he envisioned building a resort in the enclave. Here, he said, international communities could live in harmony. That's after over 15 months of Israeli bombardment devastated the coastal enclave of Gaza and killed more than 47,000 people by Palestinian tallies. It's not clear whether Trump will go ahead with his controversial plan or is simply taking an extreme position as a bargaining strategy. He did not provide specific details as he announced this proposal.
Staying with the US, but moving away from Palestine to Mexico in a major move to address the ongoing issue of fentanyl trafficking. Hundreds of Mexican soldiers were deployed to the US-Mexico border. This action comes as part of an agreement to prevent US tariffs on Mexican imports. Under the deal, Mexico has committed to cracking down on fentanyl smuggling in exchange for the suspension of tariffs that could have severely impacted trade. Take a look.
Mexican soldiers were mobilized to the US border on Tuesday to crack down on fentanyl trafficking. It's part of a deal between US President Donald Trump and Mexico's leader Claudia Sheinbaum to pause his threat of tariffs for a month. National Guard Coordinator Jose Luis Santos Isa spoke to the media.
The personnel that have just arrived belong to the National Guard. They arrived because of the recent agreements between President Claudia Sheinbaum and President Donald Trump, which consist of reinforcing the northern border of our country with people of the National Guard to avoid drug trafficking from Mexico to the United States, especially of fentanyl.
The plan to eventually deploy 10,000 Mexican soldiers is an initial concession that was announced on Monday. Sheinbaum said Washington also made promises to try and stop the flow of high-powered weapons from the United States over the border into Mexico. Mexico argues that more than 500,000 guns are trafficked annually into the country from the US. Analysts Reuters spoke to say the hefty concentration of Mexican troops at the border could leave other areas of the country vulnerable. Sheinbaum has threatened retaliatory tariffs if Trump makes good on his threat of 25% duties on Mexican imports. A trade war between Mexico and the US would likely throw Mexico into a recession, while US consumers would have been hit with higher prices on Mexican imports, including cars and trucks. Mexico's economy minister Marcelo Ebrard told reporters on Tuesday that they believed a month was, quote, more than enough to strike a deal to head off Trump's threats.
All right, moving on to US stocks. Shares of Mattel, the parent company of Barbie and Hot Wheels, surged in early trade after the toy giant raised its annual profit forecast. The company also hinted at a stabilizing demand for toys despite concerns over tariff-related uncertainty. Investors responded positively to the outlook, showing confidence in Mattel's ability to overcome challenges in the global market. Here's more.
Mattel shares climbed as much as 18% Wednesday morning after the toy maker issued an upbeat annual profit forecast. But its earnings report came with a warning for consumers, as the company said it may soon hike prices for its Barbie dolls, Hot Wheels cars, and other iconic brands. That's thanks to President Trump's tariffs, particularly the 10% tariff slapped on Chinese imports. China currently produces about 40% of Mattel's toys globally, with much of that going to U.S. stores. Toy makers in general are trying to reduce their exposure to China by shifting production elsewhere. To that end, Mattel said it expects that by 2027, no single country will produce more than 25% of its toys, something it said could be achieved by shutting down one of its plants in China. The company's fourth quarter results also beat expectations due to strong demand for Hot Wheels and its Uno cards, and despite slowing sales of Barbies.
China's antitrust regulator is reportedly preparing to investigate Apple over its policies and App Store fees. According to Bloomberg News sources, the investigation could likely examine anti-competitive practices. Remember, this comes a day after China announced measures targeting American businesses, including Alphabet.
China's antitrust regulator is reportedly preparing for a possible investigation into Apple's policies and App Store fees. Bloomberg News reported the development on Wednesday, citing people familiar with the matter. It comes a day after China announced measures targeting US businesses, including Google, farm equipment makers, and the owner of fashion brand Calvin Klein, and just minutes after new US tariffs on Chinese goods took effect. The report says the country's State Administration for Market Regulation is reviewing Apple's policies. These include its commission of up to 30% on in-app purchases and restrictions on external payment services and app stores. Shares of Apple were down over 2.5% in US pre-market trading. According to the report, Chinese regulators have been in discussions with Apple executives and app developers since last year. Apple and China's antitrust regulator did not immediately respond to Reuters' requests for comment. The regulator said on Tuesday that Google was suspected of violating the country's anti-monopoly law. It did not provide further details on the investigation or on what it alleged Google had done to breach the law.
All right, staying with Asia, Japan's Nissan might cancel its ongoing merger talks with Honda, which would have potentially built the world's third largest automaker, according to sources. The company's board members are scheduled to meet soon to decide on the next steps. If the deal ultimately falls apart, analysts believe it could cause trouble for Nissan's future prospects. Take a look.
Nissan and Honda may call off their merger talks. That's according to a Reuters source on Wednesday. Honda has reportedly suggested Nissan could become a subsidiary, but has seen the idea rejected. Spokespersons for the two firms would only say that a plan would be finalised by mid-February. If the deal does now fall through, analysts say it looks like bad news for Nissan. It's faced years of crisis, starting with the ousting and arrest of former boss Carlos Ghosn in 2018. Honda has fared better, with its $47 billion market value now nearly 5 times that of its smaller rival. However, both firms face huge challenges amid upheaval in the industry sparked by the shift to electric vehicles. That has seen the rise of new challengers like China's BYD. Their talks also come amid extra disruption posed by potential tariffs under the new US administration of Donald Trump. A tie-up would have created the world's third largest automaker behind Toyota and Volkswagen. Nissan's long-term alliance partner Renault, which owns more than a third of the Japanese firm, has said it is open to a merger. Reuters sources say smaller alliance partner Mitsubishi, which had considered joining the merger, might now opt out. Now the Honda and Nissan boards are expected to meet soon to decide on next steps. Shares in both firms rose in Wednesday morning trade, with exporters generally on the up amid hopes that US tariffs might not be as painful as previously feared.
Well, that's all we have time for on this edition of Morning Brief at 9. News will continue right here on News 9. Up next, Shriya Kundu brings you all the latest at 10 a.m. You're watching News 9.
It's not the fiefdom of politicians. They owe it to the people. Matter is now more about faith of the millions of devotees than just political slugfest. Does that mean that I can't get a job in Chennai, although I may be best suited for that particular job? They have more